Hello, welcome to globalsustainability.info. My name is Jeb Taylor, and this is the first in a series of webcasts dedicated to achieving global sustainability by 2050. One might think that the first step in this process should be to address pressing environmental issues such as carbon dioxide pollution or social issues such as overpopulation. These and many other pertinent issues will be addressed in future webcasts, but the first and by far the most important step in this process will be to alter our perspectives to ones that are conducive to achieving sustainability. So that will be the focus of this first webcast. For the vast majority of our species' history, we practiced various foraging subsistence strategies. Then, somewhere in the Middle East around 12,000 years ago, a small group of foragers made a decision that profoundly affected the future of not only our species, but all species. In an attempt to enhance their own survival prospects, they adopted an innovative survival strategy based on agriculture. In so doing, they inadvertently crossed a threshold between what was essentially a primitive or natural existence and one that is essentially a civilized or artificial existence. This is an extremely important distinction to recognize because behavior that was appropriate in primitive or natural settings is not necessarily appropriate in civilized or artificial settings. Artificial development has provided our species with tremendous survival advantages over most other species. In a very real sense, it has enabled us, at least temporarily, to circumvent natural selection and impose what can best be regarded as artificial selection. For better or for worse, we now have the power to determine which species will survive and which ones will not. A strong argument can be made that no species should have this much power, and yet we do. And an equally strong argument can be made that since we fortuitously acquired it, that we should use it with great restraint. But we aren't. We are using it with reckless abandon to advance the superficial, short-term goals of our own species, to the detriment of most other species in the environment. Unfortunately, our stupendous short-term success utilizing artificial development has blinded us to the fact that we cannot negatively impact other species in the environment without also negatively impacting ourselves. Consequently, artificial development, or at least its current manifestation, is now actually diminishing rather than enhancing our long-term survival prospects. It is absolutely essential that we realize now that the perpetuation of civilization is not assured, and that if we continue to misuse the power afforded to us through artificial development as irresponsibly as we currently are, that we will exhaust Earth's capacity to sustain us, and civilization will collapse. As was mentioned earlier, the first step in the pursuit of global sustainability is to alter our perspectives. We can regard this as part of our maturation process as civilized beings. Unfortunately, there's a great deal of resistance to this type of change because, for the vast majority of our species' history, we have passed on as inviolate cultural traditions and beliefs that prohibit us from implementing the types of changes we need to make in order to achieve global sustainability. Technological changes did occur in primitive settings, but they generally occurred so infrequently that people had time to incorporate them into their cultural traditions before being confronted with new ones. Even the adoption of agriculture probably occurred gradually over many generations. However, once foragers adopted agriculture as their primary subsistence strategy and became sedentary, technological innovations began to occur with astonishing rapidity. Our species has adapted to the utilization of these innovations surprisingly well, but we have not adapted to the effects of these innovations very well at all. For example, for the vast majority of our species' history, we reproduced indiscriminately because mortality rates were so high that it was the only way to maintain viable populations. Since we adopted agriculture 12,000 years ago, however, artificial development has enabled our population to soar from a natural level of about 5 million to over 7 billion. That's an increase of nearly 140,000%. We tend to regard this increase as an affirmation of our success utilizing artificial development, and to a certain extent it is. But overpopulation is now arguably the single greatest threat to our species, so we should be exercising negative population growth, but we aren't. Additionally, in pre-agricultural societies, our survival required that we establish and maintain intense tribal loyalties because there was always the risk of intertribal conflict. That is no longer the case. Our survival today is dependent more and more on achieving international solidarity and cooperation, so we should also be encouraging global solidarity, but we aren't. This reluctance exists primarily because we have extended our primitive tribal perspectives to encompass linguistic, national, racial, regional, religious, political, class, gender, and other perceived, inherited, and/or acquired commonalities. Unfortunately, many of these commonalities are based on ideological beliefs conceived solely through imagination, or if religious in nature, allegedly through divination. The local acceptance of these beliefs may help to establish solidarity within specific social groups, but tragically, it virtually assures that there will be intense polarity between them, a condition that must be transcended before we can achieve global sustainability. Contrary to popular belief, no matter how advanced and/or powerful individual civilizations become, they cannot survive on their own. Many have tried in the past, but all of them failed. Without knowing it, when our ancestors adopted agriculture 12,000 years ago, they inadvertently committed us to achieving comprehensive global solidarity. If we fail to accomplish this task, civilization will collapse, and if it collapses at this stage of its development, it is unlikely that it can ever recover. This means that future generations will not enjoy the technological innovations that we have come to rely on: electricity, running water, motorized transportation, clean water, abundant food, modern medicine, advanced communications, etc. Instead, they will be forced to adopt a salvaging subsistence strategy, struggling just to survive, and tragically, very few of them will succeed. Paradoxically, the primary reason why we don't act more responsibly today is that we have been indoctrinated to maintain, perpetuate, and defend irrational and polarizing traditions and beliefs, the most pervasive of which were established thousands of years ago and are completely implausible. Nevertheless, our compulsion to perpetuate them is powerful and forms the foundation of political conservatism. Conservatism may have been an appropriate perspective in primitive existences, but today it severely hinders our abilities to manage artificial development responsibly. Consequently, we should also be encouraging greater objectivity, but we aren't. Large and very influential segments of our population maintain fundamentally conservative perspectives. If civilization is to continue, we will have to alter our behavior profoundly and immediately. This will require that we adopt far more realistic perspectives. Unfortunately, our adherence to antiquated, polarizing traditions and beliefs is preventing this from happening. Consequently, transcending these irrational traditions and beliefs is the second step in achieving global sustainability and will be the subject of the next several webcasts in this series. I hope that you will stop back to view them, and as always, if you find them worthy, please share them with others. Thank you.